Okay, let's unpack this. In this episode, we will talk about NovelSeek. When an agent becomes the scientist.
This is a genuinely exciting development. It really points towards a future where AI isn't just, helping scientists out,
Right.
but maybe taking on much more independent roles in the research itself. The material we're digging into introduces NovelSeek as this pretty sophisticated framework. It's designed for something called Autonomous Scientific Research, ASR.
Autonomous scientific research. Right. So if I'm getting this right, this means using AI, like specifically large language models, LLMs, and maybe even linking them to lab equipment to handle the whole scientific process, like from dreaming up an idea, figuring out how to test it, maybe running the experiment, looking at the data, and then learning from it all.
Exactly. Think of it as automating that research cycle pretty much end to end.
Hmm.
It's also sometimes called autonomous scientific discovery, or ASD. So instead of a person doing every single step, the AI system is built to navigate, well, a big chunk of that journey on its own.
And our mission in this deep dive is really to get to grips with NovelSeek based on these sources. What is it? How does it actually work its magic with this system of agents? What kinds of experiments did they run to test it out in different fields?
Mhm.
And what does its performance actually tell us about the potential for AI to, well, genuinely speed up discovery?
And a really key point the researchers make is that NovelSeek tries to tackle some big hurdles that, earlier ASR attempts ran into. Two main ones.
Okay.
First, coming up with research proposals that aren't just like effective but are genuinely novel,
Mm-hmm.
new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Most AI learns from stuff that already exists,
Right.
right? So getting it to suggest something totally fresh is tricky.
Because you don't just want it finding the best way to do what we already know. You want it proposing something maybe nobody's thought of yet.
Precisely. And the second big challenge is creating a truly closed-loop system. It's one thing for an AI to spit out an idea.
Sure.
It's another thing entirely to then figure out the experimental steps, actually do them, run the experiment, analyze what happened, and then use that feedback, good or bad results, success or failure, to tweak the original idea or maybe come up with a new one, all inside the system.
Ah, so that ability to self-correct, to learn from the actual experimental results, that's the real bottleneck. And that's what NovelSeek is designed to handle.
That's the claim. The researchers present NovelSeek as a framework that lets people tackle complex scientific problems with, and I quote, unprecedented speed and precision compared to doing it all by hand.
And they highlight three main advantages. First one, scalability. They say it's versatile, works across 12 different scientific research tasks.
Yeah, they really put it through its paces across a wide spectrum. You've got AI tasks in there, understanding images, text, 3D data,
Mm-hmm.
but also fundamental science, chemistry, like
Yeah.
predicting reaction yields, or biology, understanding how gene enhancers work. The fact it can handle data like images, point clouds, language, time series, chemical structures, that's a big deal.
Second advantage they mention is interactivity. So it's built with ways for human experts to step in and give feedback, and also for the different AI agents inside the system to talk to each other.
Absolutely crucial. While the goal is autonomous, it still recognizes that human insight is valuable, especially for really complex stuff, or just making sure the AI's research idea is actually doable in a lab. It's not about kicking humans out, more like enabling a new kind of teamwork, or even letting the AI run independently sometimes.
And the third one, efficiency. The performance gains they report.
Oh,
Well, they seem pretty striking, especially how fast it achieves them compared to human efforts.
they really are. Improving something like reaction, yield prediction performance by a significant chunk in just 12 hours. That could take researchers months of trial and error.
Wow.
Or boosting the accuracy for predicting enhancer activity that much in only 4 hours. And even getting noticeable improvements in tough areas like 2D image segmentation in just 30 hours. That time compression alone is a major potential benefit.
Okay, so that's the what and the why. How does it actually do all this? The core seems to be this closed-loop pipeline with four main stages.
Right. It kicks off with generating ideas and letting them evolve. Then it folds in feedback, including from humans. Then it moves to building a really detailed plan and methodology from the best ideas. And finally, it plans and executes the experiments, possibly doing multiple rounds based on the results it gets.
And powering each of these stages are these specialized AI agents all working together. The paper talks about three primary capabilities that involve these agents. Let's start with capability one, self-evolving idea generation with human interactive feedback. Sounds like the creative core.
This is definitely where the innovation happens, where the new ideas come from and get shaped. It involves several different agents collaborating.
Okay, first there's the survey agent. This one seems like a literature expert digging through research papers.
It is, yeah. It kind of works in two modes, a bit like a human researcher might. First, there's a literature review mode. It casts a wide net using keywords it gets from the task description, scans databases, and figures out what's relevant mostly by looking at abstracts or summaries.
So just finding the potentially relevant stuff first.
Exactly. Then, it switches gears into deep research mode. For the papers that look really promising, it actually dives into the full text. It pulls out deeper insights, and this is key. It identifies new technical terms or specific models mentioned in those papers.
Ah.
And it uses those new terms to generate new keyword combinations for more searches. So it dynamically refines its search based on what it's reading, like reading one paper, seeing it mention, say, multimodal transformers for reaction prediction, and then searching specifically for more papers on that technique.
Right, so it learns how to search better as it reads. That makes a lot of sense.
Then you've got the code review agent. This one is like your expert programmer on the team. It needs to understand the code the system might be starting with.
So its job is to analyze the existing baseline code for whatever task they're tackling. Code that maybe a user provides, or code it finds on places like GitHub.
Yep, it has to break down the code, understand its structure, how it works logically, what it's supposed to do,
Yeah.
because that's crucial for figuring out how to modify it or build on it later. It uses tools for static analysis, looking at the code structure without running it, and also LLMs to help summarize what the code does. And for big projects, it uses parallel processing to speed things up.
Which is important because real scientific code isn't usually just one simple file, right? It's often complex.
Definitely. Okay, then comes the idea innovation agent. This sounds like the real creative spark plug.
This agent is the one actually automating the process of generating new research ideas and then evolving them. It's designed to go beyond just summarizing what's already known and try to come up with genuinely novel concepts, sort of trying to overcome the slowness and potential biases of purely manual research. It has two main jobs. First, idea generation. It uses a powerful general LLM they mention using GPT-4o in the details, and they set it to be quite creative, a high-temperature setting,
Right, to encourage diverse ideas.
to brainstorm a wide range of possibilities. It bases these initial ideas on the task definition, what the code review agent found, and the knowledge the survey agent gathered from the literature.
So it explores a pretty broad space. Second job is idea evolution. This is where the ideas don't just sit there, they get iteratively refined. It uses language models again to analyze an initial idea, incorporate critiques maybe from other agents or critically from a human expert, and blend in more insights from the literature. This lets it take a maybe vague initial idea and sharpen it, make it more concrete, feasible, and better aligned with the goal.
So it's constantly improving its own suggestions based on feedback and new info. That iterative loop seems absolutely central to getting beyond basic ideas.
Absolutely. The process is designed to balance that push for novelty with practical stuff like, is this actually feasible?
Oh.
Is it relevant? Is it ethical?
Okay, but how does it pick which ideas are worth pursuing? That sounds like the job of the assessment agent.
Exactly. The assessment agent is the quality control. It tries to bring some rigor to evaluating ideas, moving beyond just subjective human judgment. It scores each idea across multiple dimensions.
Like how coherent is the idea? How credible is it based on what we know? Is it actually testable, verifiable? How novel is it really? And does it align with the original research goal?
Yes, scoring each of those, maybe on a 0-10 scale, then combining them into an overall score, likely using LLMs again for the evaluation. And importantly, it's designed to try and ensure the top-ranked ideas show some diversity. You don't want the top 5 ideas to all be tiny variations of each other.
Promoting exploration of different directions. And you mentioned the interactivity advantage. This is where human interactive feedback fits in, right? Integrated into this whole idea generation phase.
It's a critical loop, yeah, especially for really complex tasks, or when you need to make sure the AI's ideas make sense in the real world. Humans can jump in and provide direct critiques on the generated ideas, which helps refine them. The system also generates its own feedback between agents internally.
So a human expert could look at an idea and say, okay, this concept for medical imaging is interesting, but it's too general. You need to factor in constraint X or Y for it to be useful.
Precisely. The examples in the paper show exactly that human feedback, helping to steer a broad image segmentation idea towards something much more specific and impactful for medical imaging, boosting its practical value.
They're managing all these different agents, the survey, code review, idea innovation, assessment that sounds complex. Who keeps it all running smoothly? That's the orchestration agent, I gather.
The orchestration agent is, the project manager, the conductor. It coordinates the whole workflow, makes sure information gets passed between agents correctly, like ensuring the survey agent's findings actually get used by the idea innovation agent.
And it manages the timing, figures out when human feedback is needed, and how to integrate it after the assessment agent has maybe done an initial evaluation. There's a figure in the paper showing these idea evolution paths,
Figure 3.
where ideas branch out and get refined based on feedback and new knowledge. It gives you a sense of the complex process this orchestration agent is managing.
Okay, so that's capability 1, coming up with and refining the ideas. What happens next in the pipeline?
Next up is capability 2, comprehensive idea to methodology construction. This is where the system takes a promising but maybe still quite concise idea and turns it into a detailed step-by-step research plan, like a recipe.
Ah, this is that crucial bridge. Going from just a concept to a concrete plan you could actually follow in a lab or implement in code, this part is handled mainly by the methodology development agent. It seems to have two core functions.
First, methodology initialization. Basically, drafting the initial plan. It pulls together the chosen idea, insights from the baseline code analysis, and relevant methods found in the literature. It lays out the research objectives, maybe some hypotheses, identifies variables, and details the steps for collecting and analyzing data.
Right, creating that first blueprint. And second is methodology refinement. Just like the ideas evolved, this methodology plan also gets refined iteratively. The agent analyzes the initial draft, incorporates critiques, maybe automated ones from other agents, maybe human feedback again, and pulls in more literature insights to make the plan more robust, detailed, and practical.
So it's ensuring the plan is solid and actually doable, working with the assessment and orchestration agents too. This makes sure those creative AI ideas can actually be turned into real experiments.
Which brings us naturally to capability 3, evolutionary experimental planning and execution. This is where the plan meets reality, turning that detailed methodology into working code and actually running the experiments to see what happens.
And a key part of this is an exception-guided debugging framework. Its job is translating the natural language methodology into code that actually runs. And critically, it's designed to catch errors exceptions when the code runs, figure out why it crashed, and use LLMs to suggest and implement fixes.
They mentioned using a kind of dual strategy for the coding part, which makes sense because scientific code can vary a lot in complexity. They used one type of AI coding assistant, Aider, for simpler changes, maybe within a single file.
Okay.
But for more complex stuff, like changes needing coordination across multiple files in a big repository, they used a different tool, OpenHands, which is designed for those trickier repository-level coding tasks.
That ability to handle complex code bases seems really important for real-world science. And the debugging cycle sounds quite methodical. Try to run the code. If it crashes, capture the error, analyze what went wrong and where, figure out a fix, apply it, and try running again.
Yeah, repeating that loop until the code runs successfully, or maybe until it hits some preset limit on how many times it's allowed to try. And once you have code that runs, there's the experimental planning and adaptive evolution part. This is about planning the implementation steps and, crucially, refining things based on the actual results.
So it figures out which bits of the original code need changing based on the methodology, creates a step-by-step plan, could be changes to the overall architecture, tweaking algorithms, optimizing things.
And the adaptive evolution part sounds like a really key innovation here. Instead of just running the plan once and that's it involves structured iterations. After it runs an experiment with the generated code, it looks at the performance results, the empirical data. Based on those actual results, it can then decide to refine the experimental plan or even the code itself for the next round. It learns from the experiment's outcome, not just from theory.
Wow, okay. That's powerful. The system is literally learning how to do the experiment better by doing it.
Okay, so that's the engine.
Yeah.
Generating ideas with agents, building detailed plans, and then running experiments, learning as it goes. But the million-dollar question is, did it actually work when they tested it?
Right. Let's get into the experimental validation section. They ran a whole battery of experiments to see how effective NovelSeek really was at this autonomous research idea.
And they really tested it broadly across all those 12 different tasks we mentioned earlier, covering a wide range of scientific fields and AI domains, using different kinds of data too.
They used established baseline models for comparison on each task, which is standard practice. And for each task, they evaluated 10 different ideas that NovelSeek came up with.
And naturally, because science is diverse, the way they measured success, the metrics, varied by task. They use things like R squared for the chemistry predictions, mean absolute error for time series forecasting, accuracy for classification tasks, or things like mean intersection over union, MIOU, for seeing how well-predicted shapes matched actual shapes in images. Standard stuff for those specific fields.
And glancing at the implementation details gives a sense of the tools they used. They relied heavily on powerful LLMs like GPT-4 for a lot of the core agent functions, generating and evolving ideas, assessing them, managing the workflow, even helping with the code review and literature survey.
And interestingly, they used a different model, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, specifically for the coding and debugging parts. They mentioned surveying 50 papers initially, generating 15 raw ideas, and having a structured way to evolve them, picking the best ones to refine further. They also set limits on things like how many times the coding agents could try to debug, presumably to keep things efficient.
All right, the moment of truth then. What did they actually find in the experimental results and analysis? What did testing NovelSeek really show?
Well, the findings they present, spread across various tables and figures in the material, seem to paint a pretty clear picture.
First off, outperforming existing systems. How did NovelSeek do compared to the standard methods and maybe other AI research systems out there?
On tasks involving single code files, NovelSeek consistently improved performance over the baseline models. And in several cases, it significantly outperformed other automated research systems they compared against, like one called Dolphin. For example, in predicting chemical reaction yields, AutoRYP task, NovelSeek got a much better R-squared score than both the starting baseline and Dolphin's best reported result.
And they even hit state-of-the-art performance on some tasks, like 3D point cloud classification, getting top-tier accuracy without pre-training the model, which humans often need to do.
That specific result, is quite striking. It suggests the system isn't just making small improvements, but might be finding genuinely more effective or efficient ways to solve the problem. The researchers chalk up NovelSeek's strong showing to that combination of self-evolving idea generation, the solid idea to methodology step, and that iterative experimental planning with the adaptive evolution feedback loop.
The material also suggests NovelSeek had a better success rate in actually getting its generated code to run and produce improvements compared to other systems, especially on complex tasks. They link that back to the detailed methodology and the coding process being more robust.
Yes, it seems having that detailed plan first really helps the downstream coding and execution phases succeed more often.
Second point from the results. Its wide task coverage seems validated. It wasn't just a one-trick pony.
The fact that it demonstrated positive results across all 12 diverse tasks spanning different science areas and data types really speaks to its potential generalizability. A lot of that flexibility probably comes down to the survey agent being able to get up to speed on the relevant literature for a new task relatively quickly.
Third, and they really emphasize this as a key difference, is its support for repository-level experiments. This means it can handle those complex, real-world code bases that involve lots of interconnected files.
Which is vital, right, if you want to tackle serious scientific problems.
Yeah.
NovelSeek successfully worked with and improved baseline code for tasks involving these multi-file projects, like getting better results in 2D image segmentation, Auto2D-seg. That ability seems to stem from the detailed methodology it generates, the code review agent's capacity to understand complex code, and using that more advanced coding agent, OpenHands, when needed.
They also give us some runtime statistics. What does all this autonomous research actually cost in terms of computation?
The cost data they show suggests it's, well, relatively cost efficient, especially when you think about the potential human researcher time it could save. Generating each idea using GPT-4o was apparently quite cheap, less than $1 per idea.
Okay.
The coding and debugging part using Claude 3.7 Sonnet cost more per run, maybe around $1 or so, and varied depending on how complex the task was, particularly for those repository-level jobs. But overall, they position it as a cost-effective way to run these kinds of broader scientific explorations.
Okay, let's dig into some of the specific analyses of how the system worked. The survey agent, for example.
Yeah, its performance seemed to validate that two-mode approach, starting broad, then using what it learns to zero in. The analysis showed it was good at finding the key papers initially, and then using concepts from the first batch of ideas to find more specialized, relevant literature later on.
And the idea innovation agent. The way it evolves ideas is visually quite compelling in the paper. You can see an initial thought get refined over several steps, adding technical details, incorporating knowledge, becoming much more sophisticated.
Right, like an example for a reaction yield prediction, starting as add a graph descriptor and evolving into a much more specific adaptive dual attention graph transformer based on literature and feedback.
The idea to methodology step, generating those detailed, almost research paper-like plans, that level of detail seems crucial for the next step, actually coding it up.
Definitely, a fuzzy idea is hard to code. A clear, step-by-step methodology gives the AI coding agents a much better shot at successful implementation.
And that evolutionary experimental planning and adaptive evolution, the results really seem to underscore how important that iterative results-driven refinement is.
They did a specific test, an ablation study, showing that including this adaptive evolution step significantly boosted performance on certain tasks compared to just trying the initial plan once, allowing the system to analyze the actual results of an experiment and then replan based on whether it worked well or not, led to better final performance and higher success rates. It learns by doing.
They also point out that NovelSeek didn't just improve the best case performance sometimes, but also the consistency or stability of the results. They used a chemistry example showing the baseline had pretty variable performance run to run, whereas NovelSeek achieved a higher average performance with much less variation.
Which suggests the quality of the ideas and the resulting code might be more robust. It's not just getting lucky once, but finding a reliably better approach.
When they compared it directly to another system, AI researcher NovelSeek reportedly came out ahead both in performance improvements over the baseline and in being significantly more cost-efficient, like maybe 1/6 the cost.
Yeah, and the researchers suggest this difference comes down to NovelSeek's more advanced novelty generation, drawing on literature and code analysis and its complete closed-loop system, including that sophisticated planning and adaptive evolution, whereas AI researcher might rely more on user prompts or lack that full empirical feedback cycle.
Beyond just the numbers, they also show some qualitative results, visual examples of the actual innovative methods NovelSeek came up with for specific tasks, like new kinds of graph neural networks for chemistry or molecular dynamics. It gives you a feel for the technical depth of the solutions.
And finally, the human evaluation. They had actual human experts, vetted for their domain knowledge, look at ideas generated by NovelSeek versus an earlier AI system.
And the verdict.
Across different tasks and criteria like how sound the idea was, its potential contribution, overall quality, the human experts consistently rated NovelSeek's ideas higher.
So that's some external validation, that it's not just improving metrics, but generating ideas that domain specialists find genuinely more promising and novel.
Okay, so placing NovelSeek in the bigger picture. How does it fit with other work in this area of autonomous scientific research?
Well, it clearly builds on earlier systems, things like AI Scientist, Dolphin, AI Researcher, and various human-AI collaboration platforms. But the paper argues that many of those were maybe limited to simpler tasks or specific narrow domains, or didn't have that fully closed empirical loop where the system learns directly from its own experiments.
Whereas NovelSeek seems to be aiming higher, tackling more complex, system-level scientific problems, showing where it works across a much wider range of fields and data types, and crucially, including that ability to handle multi-file, repository-level code bases.
Exactly. They position it as a pretty significant step towards a more comprehensive autonomous system that can really take an idea all the way from conception through to experimental validation.
All right, so to wrap this up, NovelSeek comes across as a major stride towards realizing autonomous scientific research. It's this closed-loop multi-agent framework that's shown it can generate novel ideas, translate them into working code, and test them out experimentally across a whole bunch of different scientific areas.
And it often achieves significant performance gains, doing so potentially much, much faster than traditional human-led research cycles.
It really pulls together that whole chain from hypothesis generation and refinement through detailed planning to empirical validation and learning, all within one integrated system. This could dramatically reduce the reliance on manual effort for certain research phases and really accelerate the pace of discovery.
Now, the NovelSeek team themselves point out areas where more work is needed. They talk about future work, identifying key challenges, like improving how the system finds and truly understands existing scientific knowledge, maybe better ways to connect related papers, extract structured information, perhaps using graph networks or advanced retrieval methods like ORAG, retrieval augmented generation.
Makes sense. They also want to make the agents themselves smarter, more adaptable, maybe able to modify their own goals, better at learning from different kinds of feedback, whether it's from the experiments, other agents, or humans.
And critically, they recognize the need for better ways to measure scientific discovery itself, developing benchmarks that don't just look at novelty in isolation, but evaluate the actual value or impact of an idea, or how well the AI's methodology truly aligns with the code it generates, and how well its discoveries generalize to new, unseen problems.
It highlights that while NovelSeek looks like a big advancement, the journey towards truly intelligent and independent AI scientists is definitely ongoing.
This whole area brings up some really profound questions for us to think about. Consider the implications if systems like NovelSeek continue to improve, becoming increasingly capable of driving scientific discovery independently. How might that reshape research labs, universities, funding models?
Yeah, and what does collaboration look like when your collaborator is an AI? How does the role of the human scientist evolve?
Exactly. And what does it mean for the sheer speed at which we learn new things about the world, about ourselves, when an AI agent can, in some sense, truly become the scientist, running thousands of experiments while we sleep? What new kinds of questions might emerge when the scientist asking them is an AI?
It really pushes us to consider the future nature of inquiry itself. Perhaps the human role shifts more towards defining the grand challenges, interpreting the deepest insights, and guiding the ethical boundaries, while AI handles more of the complex, data-intensive exploration.
A fascinating, maybe even slightly unsettling future to contemplate.